All right, so welcome. We are live here at Aero Marine Life Center today. We have our webcam set up to test out a new program. So we are closed in person at the moment due to COVID-19, and we're trying to figure out what ways we can engage and connect with folks from digital platforms. So we are testing out this live stream to see if this is something that we might consider as a platform for having volunteers who are engaging with the public and talking about our North Pacific coast animals and answering questions in real time. So I've basically just parked this webcam next to one of our exhibits. My name is Melissa, and I am a staff member here at Faro. And so I've parked this webcam next to our exhibits, and we can talk a little bit about what's in the tank that we're looking at. I'm also kind of trying to figure out if this microphone setup works. So there's a lot of things we're testing today. So Faro Marine Life Center is a small nonprofit aquarium located in Port Angeles, Washington, which is on the coast of the Olympic Peninsula. If you've ever been up here before, we are in between a rocky and a sandy coast. We have cold North Pacific water. So today's water temperature is about 47 degrees Fahrenheit, so about 8 degrees Celsius. And a lot of the animals that we have in our aquarium here are animals that you would find right in our area. So we say our collection is completely local. It is all collected from within 20 miles under a education collection permit with the state of Washington. And our water is local too. So, you can see that fish swimming by there? Long, skinny fish right here. He's a gunnel. One of the things that happens when folks come in and see that long, skinny fish swimming is they think it's an eel. We have a lot of long, skinny fish in the Pacific Northwest, and eels, and no eels in our facility, but we have plenty of these long, skinny fish hanging out. These are tide pool fish. You can find them if you are at a tide pool. Tide is out. Oftentimes, if you lift up a rock, you'll see several of these little skinny guys. Make sure you put the rock back, because the way they survive is by the moisture that gets trapped under there. So this is a sandy bottom tank. I think I mentioned the water was pretty cold, and we're testing today a virtual naturalist experience. So I think if you chat, I can see it pop up, and I can answer any questions you might have about what the animals are in here. We have about 15 different habitat displays. Oh, the water is local. The water comes from the Port Angeles Harbor. So we have a couple videos on our YouTube channel that we're working on a series of how our water flows, and you can watch those to get a better sense of it. But it comes right out of the harbor, comes in through our exhibits, and then right back out into the harbor again. So these animals have a lot of what they naturally use in the water, including microscopic plants and animals, also known as plankton. It's a pretty nice day today here. It's sunny. There's a really low tide out there. Yesterday, some of our staff and volunteers went out and did a beach seine, S-E-I-N-E, and that brought in a few new animals, but mostly they did it for education purposes. So Rachel, our education manager, is working on a video, and she will be getting that set up next week or the week after, and we'll be showing you what goes on at the Hollywood Beach here in Port Angeles, the city here. A couple bright orange things you can see in the view today. So on the far left of the screen, we have a sea star, which is funny because, this is another thing you have to get used to digitally. Everything's flipped from right to left. So it's actually on my right. So I'm going to try to flip to it on the proper side of the computer. Just right here. That's a vermilion star. These are not super easy to find out of the tide pools. We've had this one here for a number of years. Sea stars are incredibly long-lived animals, and they have amazing regenerative powers. If you follow us at all on social media, on Instagram, we've been posting We just posted this week before beginning and end, well, not end, sort of a status photo of another sister we have that's in quarantine right now. It's recovering from losing a couple of its legs to speed start wasting disease. Oh, there's a big gunnel. Let's see if I can get him in the view. Okay, so this is the hard part, trying to figure out how to move this so that we can see what's going on in all the parts of the tank without making everyone sick. So that's part of what we're testing is the equipment we're using. Okay, so if you look directly ahead in the corner that it's pointed to, we have a, let's see, what kind of gunnel is he? It looks like a pen point gunnel. Those ones are mainly green, and he's swimming around over there. Disa, one of our staff members, was just here feeding, and so he might be trying to hunt down a piece of herring or another piece of food for his lunch. So I mentioned that our water comes in from the harbor, carries a lot of things that the animals naturally use. And one of those things is plankton, but it also brings in things like algae. So you can see as the gunnel is swimming along the side there. Yeah, see, I messed with the corners. Anyway, he is swimming by a wall that has some brown and green patches on it. That's actually a food source for some of our animals that are vegetarian, like chitons and other sorts of marine snails. They eat a lot of that plant material, and that is important. So we always let people know that it's not that we don't clean these habitats. We actually clean them all the time. In fact, Tom, one of our volunteers, is here today cleaning. But we leave a lot of that on the wall and on the surface of the rocks because it does provide a food source for some animals. So the other orange animals that you can see in there are burrowing sea cucumbers. So these are long, skinny, tubular animals. I don't know if I can zoom in on this. That's the downside of this particular. Apparently, we need to have over 1,000 followers in order to stream from mobile, which I know how to zoom in on. But if you can see, kind of off to the left side of the screen where the fish is swimming around, there's a tube, and out of the tube is a bunch of feathery arms. And the feathery arms are the way that the sea cucumber eats. So it loves all the microscopic plants and animals that are in the water, that plankton I was talking about. And it reaches those arms out. But one at the top of the screen is probably the best view of all of the different arms that it has in that radius pattern. And now watch, it's putting one of those appendages right into its eating tube there down the middle of its body. Basically, slurps all that good stuff off that's collected in those feathery parts. And that's how it gets its nutrition. There's also another type of sea cucumber in the front bottom. This is a white colored animal, and it is right here. That is also a sea cucumber. It is, I believe, a stiff-footed sea cucumber. Oh, so you can see that gunnel is pretty big. They can actually be quite large. So obviously, that's not going to be able to hide under a rock when they're trying this out. But yes, they can grow quite big, and of course, they have very few natural predators here at the aquarium. In fact, almost zero. And we feed them regularly, so they can get pretty big here. So the stiff-footed sea cucumber also has some feathery appendages. You can see going to town. I was trying to see if in this tank we have a California sea cucumber. I could show you, but strangely, we do not, or at least not one that's readily available. So these are very similar to the California sea cucumbers. California sea cucumbers also have long bodies, but these are more like 12 inches long, 14 inches long when they're fully grown, and their little brushy arms come out of the sort of the, you imagine their mouth is on the bottom, like a flatfish, Their brushy appendages come out of their mouth and they brush around in the sediment and pick up basically detritus, things that organic matter that's decayed and is stuck in the sand there. We also have a couple anemones, many anemones in this tank actually. So you can see one by that burrowing sea cucumber at the top of the screen. I'm going to slowly rotate this so that we can try to get to the other side of the other anemones. There we go. There's some good anemones. So anemones do come in plenty of different species. I mentioned this was a test. I am not the best at anemone identification. There's definitely something I should be practicing. But several of our anemones, we had some that reproduce by budding. So the baby anemones basically show up on the big stalk, like you see the anemone that's on the wall there. And others of them are splitters. So that means that they clone themselves and they basically split in half, like aggregating anemones is an example of that. I don't believe this particular habitat has aggregating anemones in it, but in Pacific Northwest tide pools, they're very common, obviously. If you can clone yourself a lot, you can have a lot of yourself in the same place. And so a lot of times when you go tide pooling, you'll see these like carpets of little sort of green or pink-tipped anemones that are all these clones. And that's an important thing to watch out for when you're in the wild tide pooling, you're not stepping on those animals. So one of the adaptations that anemones have to find their food, which in this case, these anemones are going to be eating fish or shrimp. Mainly we feed them shrimp or squid. Is that they have stinging cells in their tentacles, and they are able to shoot basically like a venom as part of the stinging cell and attack the fish or the animal. And then they have one tube, so that the animal gets digested in the tube, and then also what's left of the animal after digestion gets excreted through the tube. So we have an in hole and an out hole, and they just have one hole that goes through. Okay, so let's see. Oh, so you see there's actually a closed up anemone too. I'm going to point to that one, because that's one we also get a lot of questions about. That is right here. When those anemones are digesting or when the tide is out and there's not a lot of water, they will close up on themselves like that. Basically, they're saying, leave me alone, I'm busy, I'm devoting all my energy to this, I don't need to catch any more food, or I want to maintain moisture in my body. When the anemones are out like that, tentacles open, they're saying, okay, we're ready, we can, with plenty of water, and we could use some food. So a couple of the other animals that are round shapes in here, we have a couple of green sea urchins and a couple of purple sea urchins. So the green sea urchins, I'll point to those. There's one right here. And another one on the wall, way over there. It's hard for me to reach. But so those are short spined sea urchins. The purple sea urchins, which are on the wall across from the green, in between the anemone and the green sea urchin, are slightly longer spined sea urchins. And then there's a pink sea urchin, which I think I can get if I turn a little bit more. Yeah. So if you look underneath that white tubular hose, there's a couple of purple sea urchins, and then down below by the sand line is a pink sea urchin, or sometimes a red sea urchin, and those have much longer spines. So here at Barrow, we like to talk to kids about how urchins can give you hugs, and that kind of helps make it clear that these are animals that are in this sort of shell with these spines. They don't look like us. None of these animals really act like us. Anemones are particularly hard for people to understand, but there's a lot about marine invertebrates that we don't know, and we are slowly getting more and more understanding as people are finding ways to study them differently. A lot of that is based on how much funding there is to study them, and anemones is interesting. There's a little bit of a disagreement about whether or not anemones are animals that should be in touch touch exhibits. We don't have any anemones in our touch exhibits, and one of the reasons is, as you mentioned, they shoot those little, they have receiving cells, and they shoot those little packs of venom. That can really deplete the energy of the anemone, and so we want to make sure that these animals aren't inadvertently just firing off their receiving cells all day long and depleting their energy. So we don't put them in the touch tank for that reason. Many of these other animals, the urchins, actually don't seem to be bothered at all by touch. We always have a docent or a volunteer at the touch tank to talk about how to touch them and how to be gentle with them. And that's another element of talking to folks about getting hugs from them. So if you can imagine putting your fingers in between the spines, and the urchin is curious and wants to explore, it'll close up those spines around your finger and give it a gentle squeeze. And that's a way to show that the animal is reactive to what's going on in its environment, and also a great way to kind of get up close and personal to the other things that urchins possess. Their little tube feet and also their interesting mouth setup. Urchins actually have pretty strong teeth. A lot of people don't realize that. They love to eat kelp, which is basically a type of algae, or if you like a version of a seaweed that you might call it a seaweed. And so when they eat, you think, oh, they're just chewing on the soft plant matter. Of course, their teeth can cut through algae, but in reality, a lot of these urchins, they're so strong they actually burrow into rocks. So if you see, there's a couple of rocks right in the middle right of the screen there that have some weird holes, depressions in them. Some of those depressions could have been made by urchins. There's also a species of clam called a burrowing clam that can use its rasp to get into some of this sort of softer sandstone. But if you go out to the tide pool, you'll see a lot of urchins buried in these urchin dug holes. They haven't found those holes, they've made them. And they're using basically 5 teeth to do that. So they have kind of an interesting lifestyle that most people take for granted. They're very popular on menus, especially for sushi restaurants, and yeah, they're interesting. All right, so let's see. We talked about how about scallops? We haven't gotten to the big fleshy lips here. So I'm going to point to this giant scallop. All right, so again, scallops, giant scallops, probably not something you're going to be eating. We eat generally smaller scallops. They're a little less tough, but again, the scallops here don't really have very many predators, and we feed them plenty of fresh plankton as the seawater flows through the system, so they can get pretty large. Those fleshy lips have sort of strainers on them, if you will, to take the material in. They can close up pretty tightly. You do not want to stick your finger in their mouth, and so we don't also put those in the touch tank. And interesting thing about scallops is they actually have these kind of little tiny light sensors all along the rim of their shell where their mouth opening is, and they can kind of use that to determine if they're opening or closing, and or whether they need to swim away. So scallops also have a swimming ability. The giant scallops don't swim very much. Swimming scallops is a type of scallop that does a lot more swimming. They're much smaller and presumably lighter in the water column. All right, so I'm going to try to see. There's a couple of crabs over here. So again, forgive me for moving and not making a little bouncy. You know, 1,000 subscribers, we could do this on mobile, and it's much easier. Okay, so in this view, you can actually see a decorator crab crawling up the rock on the very corner of the tank there. You can see that white tip claw. That's one of the ways you know it's a decorator crab. And then there's a little container with some food in it, actually up on the wall. And that's something that mysis shrimp and brine shrimp that we feed things with small mouths. All right, so I'm going to turn the microphone off, and we're just going to kind of focus on this guy for a little bit. And have any questions? Let me know. All right, this is Melissa again. It's about 1:30, and we're going to do about a half hour at a time. But I did want to point out before we sign off, there is a rather large fish just here where my finger is, hiding under the rock. This is let's see, it's either a clingfish or a snailfish. Even I'm having a hard time trying to figure out what's down there. This is why our naturalists are going to be a little better at this than I am. But that's another thing that we appreciate being able to do here is show folks the stuff that spends a lot of time hiding that you wouldn't really see if you were maybe at the tide pool on your own. Okay, well, thanks for joining, and we appreciate your participation. If you have any kind of comment or question later on, and this is no longer live, feel free to leave it, and we'll get it answered as soon as we can. And have a great day, everyone.